Compañeras, compañeros, aunque mi
Dear comrades, even though my Spanish is not perfect, I would nonetheless talk to Spanish delegates so that the message of Social Democrats will be clear. What's at stake is Europe. And I'm not exaggerating here. It's a reality, it's a fact. The last thing our children deserve is to have no one left to defend such important conquests that were so hard to get. These upcoming elections are the first one where millennials will be able to vote. For the first time, they'll be able to choose the kind of Europe they want. I really have a lot of trust in this generation because it is my children's generation. And we need to offer them a Europe of all and for all, a Europe which is progressive.
We are fighting for the soul of Europe. So much has been said already today, so eloquently, about the many things we will have to do and the many plans we have. And I'm so proud to be able to go into the electoral campaign with this manifesto, which brings a sense of urgency, of pride, and of optimism to a continent that desperately needs it. But I want to start with a small story about somebody who sadly passed away a few days ago. She was 93 years old. Her name was Frida Menko. She was born in Amsterdam in 1925. As a young girl, when she played in the streets, she had a playmate called Anne Frank, lived around the corner. Frida was also Jewish, so with the family Frank, also her family was deported to Auschwitz. You know what happened to the Frank sisters? Frida survived because her mother was able to give her bread when she was in the hospital in Auschwitz on a daily basis, the only reason why she survived. Frida spent the rest of her life after the war talking about her experience to several generations of young Dutch people, explaining why this hatred should never come back to our continent. We are now in a time when people like Frida are slowly passing away, and we have no more first witness experience of the Holocaust. At the same time, it saddens me to see that in her final years, Frida experienced a rise of anti-Semitism again in Europe. I make a pledge to Frida and her legacy, and I make a pledge to every single one of you. I will keep fighting tooth and nail against anti-Semites and anti-Semitism. This is our duty. If our Jewish sisters and brothers do not feel safe in Europe, there is no Europe. This is our oldest and darkest angel. Whenever we are insecure, anti-Semitism is on the rise. Anti-Semitism is bad wherever it comes from. Whether it's from the political extremes, whether it's from religious idiocy, or whether it's the new anti-Semitism hiding behind anti-Zionism. It is bad, and we as socialists will say no to it. I'm glad that many of those who spoke today spoke about a new social contract. We need that. But we should also never forget that who actually made the first social contracts? Where were they born? They were born in the socialist movement. They were born in the labor movement. They were born thanks to the trade unions. And in addition to everything that was said about the social contract here today, I would like to say two things. First of all, I pledge a strong alliance with Europe's trade unions. I strongly believe we need to bring back the strength of collective bargaining, and we should do that at the European level. And we should also make sure that we get decent pay for decent work, that we make sure that this idea that we could compete on low wages is finally left behind us. And this can only happen if we have a fair taxation system. No longer can we have the situation in Europe that multinationals make billions of euros of profit and pay €0 taxes. Not acceptable. It will stop when I'm President of the Commission. We should not underestimate the incredible challenge we face because of the fourth industrial revolution, but also because the planet is reaching the limits of what it can carry. What is our movement about? What is the origin of socialism? Why did we come up with this brilliant idea? Because there was a lack of fairness. The social movement is about redistribution. And usually it was about redistribution of labor, redistribution of capital, because we thought the world was limitless and could endlessly provide for everyone. Now we need to talk about redistribution of limited resources of the world. We need to make sure that we don't end the resources of the world, that we reuse them, that we go to a circular economy. And this is not just an issue of fairness. It's an issue of war and peace. I do not want to see the generation of my children involved in wars over water, in wars over precious materials, in wars over other issues because there is a shortage, in wars over clean air. And this is an essential issue for social democracy, because the people we represent do not have the luxury to go elsewhere if the conditions where they live become unlivable because they suffocate because of bad air quality. They cannot afford to buy a condominium in St. Moritz or somewhere else. They live where they live, and we should guarantee that they live there without becoming sick because of the bad quality of the air or the water or the other environments. So never let anybody tell you that changing our society into a sustainable society is a luxury. No, it's essential. And don't let people tell you that this is something for the rich. No, the rich will always find a way out. People we represent can't if we don't stand by them, and we will leave no one behind. I want to pick up one issue that as yet was not discussed, and for me is very important. Everywhere I go in Europe, I speak to young people, I speak to elderly people, and all of us in between. Everybody raises with me the issue of housing. There is an incredible shortage of affordable housing in Europe. It is preventing young people from building up their lives with their families. It is preventing older people from moving to housing that is fitting for their generation. It is a scandal. If I'm President of the Commission, I would start an alliance with cities and towns all over Europe, and I would say, if you, when you have new building projects, if you allocate a substantial percentage of that to social housing, Europe will support you through structural funds. Housing, decent jobs, Youth guarantee needs to be made much bigger. Children need to get more support. Indeed, it is a scandal that 1 out of 4 of our children goes to school hungry, doesn't feel happy, doesn't see a future. A challenge to all of you, wherever you're from. When you go home, just once go to a school where people say these children don't have many opportunities. Go to those schools. Just take an afternoon off. Do me that favor. And there's one question I would like you to ask these children. What do you dream about? What would you like to be? I always ask that question. And you know what the most chilling thing is? Too often, the children have never been asked in their lives what they dream about. This is something we should change. This is something that is part of our legacy. This is something that is essential for our future. Let our children dream again. The issue of migration was raised, obviously, because it's one of the most important topics we will be facing now and in the future. I want to add one element to that debate. Just as we understood after the Second World War that crossing the Rhine and establishing a partnership between France and Germany, a partnership that would create bonds that could never be broken, was our destiny. Just as we understood after 1989 that crossing the Elbe and making sure that a partnership would be forged between East and West that could never be broken again. I believe that our task today and that of next generations is to forge an equal partnership with our sister continent on the other side of the Mediterranean, which is Africa. All too often in Europe, people talk about the problems of Africa. I would like us to talk about the potential of Africa. Look at the force of the young people. Look at this incredible force of nature that are the young generations in Africa. And isn't it sad that they would take the risk of drowning in the Mediterranean because this force can find no outlet in Africa itself? Should we not giving them an outlet for their force in Africa? Yes, my friends, I believe that is also our duty. Because every person drowning in the Mediterranean is another scar on Europe's soul. And a soul can only take so many scars before it falters and fails. We cannot, on the one hand, say we attach much value to our fundamental values and at the same time say, but let them drown in the Mediterranean. This is simply unacceptable. So a sustainable solution needs to be found. Absolutely not saying everybody should be able to come to Europe who wants, but we need to create better opportunity so that people don't feel the need to risk their lives in the hands of horrible smugglers to come to Europe. This is our collective duty. I love to take this message to our people. I think many of our governments in the European Union in the last couple of years, in Sweden, in Romania, in Spain, in Portugal, have contributed, and now with the recent proposals, also Andrea has made in Germany, really you see immediately if the social democracy embraces a better social future, the people reward that. You've seen in the countries I've mentioned, pensions going up, salaries going up, minimum wages going up. This is what we do when we are in government. We do this in Sweden, we do this in Romania, we do this in Spain, we do this in Portugal, and we do this in Germany and all the other places we can have an influence. But if we are the party that speaks most about our values, if we are the party that criticizes others when they are breaking down the rule of law, when they are curtailing the freedom of the press, when they are putting judges under control, when they are stopping fighting corruption. We should also speak in plain language if we see problems like that in our own family. This is our duty. We cannot avoid that discussion. And this is a message that was clearly passed yesterday also by us three, Sergei, Udo, and myself, to Liviu Dragnea when we met. We said, Liviu, if you want to be part of this family, fundamental values are to be observed and respected, and Liviu said he would. We will have a discussion about this in the coming days and weeks, but we cannot compromise on that. This is a red line for our movement. This is a red line for Europe. Because I have seen that Romania has become a society vibrant, open, a society where the fight against corruption has been extremely successful over the last years, a society where we have free media, a society where the judiciary can work in independent ways. This cannot be changed. We shouldn't go back there, because I've just been in Hungary. I've seen what happens if you go back there. In Hungary, a man has chained a full population to their fears. They are chained to their fears, and therefore they don't see the hope. They don't see Europe. They don't see that we're in this together. They believe they are left alone. They believe they have enemies everywhere. And let me be, in my final words, very clear. I say to Robert Biedron, you're right, spring is coming. When I see school children all over Europe spontaneously going into the streets because they want us to do something about climate change, then I see spring is coming. When I see women everywhere in Europe standing up for their rights in the Me Too movement, I see spring is coming. And let me promise to the women that are so courageous to speak out. When I'm President of the Commission, I'll put a legislative proposal on the table to have very firm and hard action to ban gender-based violence. Nonsense. It's nonsense to want to talk about the Istanbul Convention as a danger to our society. We will go beyond that. We will put European legislation to make sure that gender-based violence is banned out of our societies. And by the end of the Commission I lead, the gender pay gap will be gone, will be zero. By the end of the Commission I lead, men and women will get exactly the same pay for exactly the same job, and we will put that into legislation. I leave you with this message. Spring is coming. I see it in Portugal. I see it in Sweden. I see it in this country. I see it in the new hope in Germany. I see it in Polish society that is far more resilient than Polish society is given credit for. I see it in the hearts of our friends fighting for these rights all over Europe. And I see it in one man who holds the key to a progressive future of Europe and who needs to win the elections on the 28th of April. This man is Pedro Sanchez. Come on. I mean, in the eternal words of my hero, Bruce Springsteen, is anybody alive out there? Is anybody alive out there? Is anybody alive out there?